All right, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to Viral Video Vault. We are covering the 2016 Republican GOP debate here on CNN, and we're covering the last, I'd say, about 34 minutes of the debate. I got here a little bit late. I apologize for that. And for those of you watching, please note that this video is in compliance with YouTube's terms of service and is not to be considered misleading, spam, or commercially deceptive content. So as you can see right here, this was when things were getting pretty heated between Donald Trump and Jeb Bush. And let's not we're not gonna lie, things really definitely got heated up between the two. That's for sure. So I'm able to provide some commentary for you. This is the life with Kentucky Sen. New season starts Wednesday, September 30th on CNN. Welcome back to CNN's Republican presidential debate at the Reagan Library here in Simi Valley, California. Many people on social media wanted us to ask about marijuana legalization. Senator Paul, Governor Christie recently said, quote, if you're getting high in Colorado today where marijuana has been legalized, enjoy it until January 2017 because I will enforce the federal laws against marijuana. Oh, God.
I think one of the great problems and what the American people don't like about politics is hypocrisy. People who have one standard for others and not for themselves. There's at least one prominent example on the stage that someone says they smoked pot in high school. And yet the people going to jail for this are poor people, often African Americans and often Hispanics. And yet there are rich kids who use drugs at home. I personally think that this is a crime for which the only victim is the individual. And I think that America has to take a different attitude. I'd like to see more rehabilitation and less incarceration. I'm a fan of the drug courts which try to direct you back towards work and less time in jail. But the bottom line is the states, we say we like the 10th Amendment until we start talking about this. And I think the federal government's gone too far. I think that the war on drugs has had a racial outcome and really has been something that's really damaged the inner cities. Not only the drugs damage them, we damage them again by incarcerating them and then preventing them from getting employment over time. So I think that the federal government should override the states. I believe in the 10th Amendment, and I really will say that the states are left to themselves.
I want to give the person that you call the hypocrite an opportunity to respond. Do you want to identify that person?
Well, I think if we left it open, we could see how many people smoke pot in high school.
Is there something you're specifically thinking of?
Well, the thing is that, yeah, I was talking
That's what I
about.
thought. What does he say?
I wanted to make it easier for him, and I just did. So 40 years ago, I smoked marijuana, and I admit it. I'm sure that other people might have done it and may not want to say it in front of 25 million people. My mom's not happy that I just did. That's true. But here's the deal. We have a serious epidemic of drugs that goes way beyond marijuana. What goes on in Colorado, as far as I'm concerned, that should be a state decision. But if you look at the problem of drugs in this society today, it's a serious problem. Right? You know this because you're campaigning in New Hampshire like all of us, and you see the epidemic of heroin, the overdose families are being torn apart. It is appropriate for the government to play a consistent role to be able to provide more treatment, more prevention. We're the state that has the most drug courts across every circuit in Florida. There are drug courts to give people a second chance. That's the best way to do this.
Let me respond. The thing is that in Florida, Governor Bush campaigned against medical marijuana. That means that a small child like Morgan Hicks that has 500 seizures a day, is failing on non-traditional medications, is not allowed to use cannabis oil. And then if they attempt to do that in Florida, they will take the child away, they will put the parents in jail. And that's what that means. If you're against allowing people to use medical marijuana, you actually put them in jail. They actually, in current circumstances, kids who have privilege like you do don't go to jail, but the poor kids in our inner cities go to jail. I don't think that's fair, and I think that we need to acknowledge it, and it is hypocritical to still want to put poor people in jail.
I don't want to put poor people in jail, Raymond. Here's the deal. No, I did not oppose when the legislature passed the bill to deal with that very issue. That's the way already solved this problem. Medical marijuana on the ballot was opened up. There's a huge loophole. It was the first step towards getting to a Colorado place. And as a citizen of Florida, I voted no.
But that means you'll put people in jail. It's not put people in jail. It's not my issue.
That's true. Go ahead, Christine.
I enjoyed the interplay. Thank you, gentlemen. And I just say this. First off, New Jersey is the first state in the nation that now says if you are a non-violent, non-dealing drug user, you don't go to jail for your first offense. You have mandatory treatment. You see, as Jake, I'm pro-life. And I think you need to be pro-life for more than just the time of the womb. It gets a lot tougher when they get out of the womb. And when they're a 16-year-old drug addict in a Florida county lockup, that life is just as precious as the life in the womb. And so that's why I'm for rehabilitation, why I think the war on drugs has been failed. But I'll end with this. It doesn't mean we should be legalizing gateway drugs. And if Senator Paul thinks that the only victim is the person, look at the decrease in productivity, look at the way people get used and move on to other drugs when they use marijuana as a gateway drug. It's not them that are the only victims. Their families are the victims too. Their children are the victims too. And their employers are the victims also. And that's why I want to enforce federal law. And you can still put an emphasis on rehabilitation. But you've got to
Yeah, you can respond, and then I'll bring in you, Ms. Gary.
understand what they're saying. If they're going to say we are going to enforce the federal law against what the state law is, they don't really believe in the 10th Amendment. Governor Christie would go into Colorado, and if you're breaking any federal law on marijuana, even though the state law allows it, he would put you in jail. If a young mother is trying to give her child cannabis oil for medical marijuana procedure treatment, he would put her in jail if it violates federal law. I would let Colorado do what the 10th Amendment says. This power, we were never intended to have crime dealing at the federal level. Crime is supposed to be left in the states. Colorado's made their decision, and I don't want the federal government interfering and putting moms in jail for simply trying to get medicine to their kids.
And Senator Paul knows that's simply not the truth. In New Jersey, we have medical marijuana laws, which I've supported and implemented. This is not medical marijuana. This goes as much further step beyond. This is recreational use of marijuana. This is much different. And so while we'd like to use a sympathetic story to back up his point, it doesn't work. I'm not against medical marijuana. It's true in New Jersey, but I am against the recreational use of marijuana. If he wants to change the federal law, Congress will pass a law to change it to get a president to sign it.
Yes, Senator Paul.
Here's the thing is, he doesn't want to make it about medical marijuana, but what if New Jersey's medical marijuana contradicts the federal law? He's saying he will send the federal government in, and he will enforce the federal law. That's not consistent with the 10th Amendment. It's not consistent with states' rights, and it's not consistent with the conservative vision for the country. I don't think we should be sending the federal police in to arrest a mother and separate them from their child for giving a medicine to their child.
And Jake,
I want to bring in Ms. Gary. I want to bring in Ms. Gary on this issue.
I very much hope that I am the only person on this stage who can say this, but I know there are millions of Americans out there who will say the same thing. My husband Frank and I buried a child to drug addiction. So, we must invest more in the treatment of drugs. I agree with Senator Paul. I agree with states' rights. But we are misleading young people when we tell them that marijuana is just like having a beer. It's not. And the marijuana that kids are smoking today is not the same as the marijuana that Jeb Bush smoked 40 years ago. We do separate we do need criminal justice reform.
We buried a kid because of drug abuse. It wasn't from weed. That's for damn sure.
For nonviolent offenses, mostly drug related, it's clearly not working. But we need to tell young people the truth. Drug addiction is an epidemic, and it is taking too many of our young people. I know this sadly from personal experience.
Q, and I'd like to.
Thank you, Jake. Tomorrow's Constitution Day. We were talking about the 10th Amendment. We'll talk about the 2nd Amendment. Governor Bush, one of the things the Supreme Court got
Guys, type 19 if you can hear me right now.
protected individual vote. And that's what you said. The next step in the gun issues is to make sure they're not in the hands of the illegal. In this state, with the constitutional law, allows guns to be taken away from people without hearing. Where does it go? Where does it go from what you said, yeah, last week? How far
weapon permit holders. In fact, there's 1,200,000 of them. We have a reduction in violent crime because we put people.
I love how
behind
Jeb
bars
Bush
and
admits that he smoked pot,
that's the
and that's like
We're living
the
in a
big
society
deal.
today where despair kind of grows in isolation.
If a family member called, said my child, my brother, my sister were disturbed, I'd just be able to tell them to go back into that hearing.
I think there needs to be a hearing, but the fact is we need to encourage that kind of involvement. That's exactly what we need to do.
It's a tough issue as well. First of all, the only people that follow the law are law-abiding. Criminals, by definition, ignore the law. So you can pass all the gun laws in the world, like the rough ones, and criminals are going to ignore it because they are criminals. Here's the real issue. The real issue is not why, what are people using to commit violence, but why are they committing violence? And here's the truth. Because you cannot separate the social, moral, well-being of your people from their economic and other well-being. You cannot separate it. You can't have a strong country without strong people. You cannot have strong people without strong values. And you cannot have strong values without strong families and the institutions in this country that defend and support those families. Well, and today we have a left-wing government under this president that is undermining all of the institutions in society that support the family and teach those values.
Senator Cruz, I want to hear you. Your constitutional liberty refrains from that step theory of what happened to Kentucky
I am not, and you mentioned that the U.S. Supreme Court had rightly upheld the individual right to keep and bear arms. I was proud to lead 31 states before the U.S. Supreme Court defended the Second Amendment, and we won that landmark victory. And indeed, just a couple of years ago, when Harry Reid and Barack Obama came after the right to keep and bear arms of millions of Americans, I was proud to lead the fight in the United States Senate to protect our right to keep and bear arms. And for that reason, I was honored to be endorsed by Gun Owners of America as the strongest supporter of the Second Amendment on this stage today, and I will fight every day
I'd like to
to
turn
defend
it, I'd like to turn it to Anna Barrett.
Mr. Trump, you have said once or twice that you are rich, and you are by far the richest person on the stage. Chris Christie says billionaires like you and people who make and earn far less should no longer get Social Security, or at least there should be limits based on the income. You think he's wrong, and if so, why?
Speaking for myself, I'm okay with it. I think there is a certain fit to it. There are people that, frankly, it has no impact on their life whatsoever. There are many people. I would almost say leave it up to them, that I would be willing to check it off and say I will not get Social Security. I do not.
Country as a policy.
As a policy, I would almost leave it up to the people. Don't forget, they pay in and they pay in, and maybe they do well, and maybe some people want it. But the fact is that there are people that truly don't need it, and there are many people that do need it very, very badly. And I would be willing to write mine off 100%.
So is a voluntary program a way to get the Social Security system solved in America like that?
No, it's not, but with Donald, it's a good start. That's what I do.
No, listen,
This is an issue that we've got to talk about. And we haven't talked about it. 71% of all federal spending is on entitlements and debt service. When John Kennedy was elected,
Donald Trump didn't get Social Security.
Says that
Sure,
Social
why not?
Security is going to go insolvent in 7 to 8 years. So what I say is very simple. We need to see this program for new people out there who are paid into the system and need it. And if that means making sure that folks like Donald and many of us in the States don't get it, that's the right thing to do. Because here's what Hillary Clinton's going to want to do. She's going to want to put more money into a system that has already lied to us and stolen from us. This government doesn't need more money to make Social Security solvent. We need to be not paying out benefits to people who don't really need it. We need to Security means the difference between picking between heat and rent and food. That's why I put out the proposal. That's the people I try to
Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Governor. I'm coming to you right now on a separate issue. So we received a lot of questions from social media about climate change. Senator Rubio, Ronald Reagan's Secretary of State George Shultz reminds us that when Reagan was president, he faced a similar situation to the one that we're facing now. There were dire warnings from the mass consensus of the scientific community about the ozone layer shrinking. Schultz says Ronald Reagan urged skeptics in industry to come up with a plan. He said, do it as an insurance policy in case the scientists are right. The scientists were right. Reagan and his approach weren't. Secretary Schultz asks, why not take out an insurance policy and approach climate change the Reagan way?
Because we're not going to destroy our economy the way the left-wing government that we under now wants to do.
We're not
going
George Schultz.
Well, you may have lined up with a position on this issue, but here's the bottom line. Every proposal they put forward over the
change our weather, because America's a lot of things. The greatest country in the world, absolutely, but America is not the planet. And we're not even the largest carbon producer anymore. China is. And they're drilling a hole and digging anywhere in the world that they can get a hold of. So the bottom line is, I am not in favor of any policies that make America a harder place for people to live, or to work, or to raise their families. Governor Christie, you accept that climate change is real and that humans help contribute to it, without getting into the issue of China versus the United States, which I understand that you talked about before. What do you make of skeptics? To deal with the problem. Look at what we've done in New Jersey. We've already reached our clean air goals for 2020, and when I was governor, I pulled out of the regional cap and trade deal, the only state in the Northeast that did that. And we still reached our goals. Why? Because 53% of our electricity comes from nuclear. We use natural gas. We use solar power. We're the third highest using solar power state. You know why? Because we made all of this things economically feasible. I agree with Martha. We shouldn't be destroying our economy in order to chase some wild left-wing idea that somehow us by ourselves is going to fix the problem. We can contribute to that and be economically sound. We've proven that we can do that in New Jersey. Nuclear needs to be back on the table in a significant way in this country if we want to go after this problem. Just for the record, I was citing Secretary of State George Shultz, Ronald Reagan Secretary of State. I don't think anybody would call him left. No, listen, everybody makes a mistake. It's really a representation of what he believes we should be doing, but with all due respect to the former Secretary of State, I disagree. Jake, you mentioned me and called me a denier. Let me say, I called you a skeptic. Okay, a skeptic. You can measure the climate. You can measure. That's not the issue we're discussing. Here's what I'm skeptical of. I'm skeptical of the decisions that the left wants us to make. Because I know the impact those are going to have, and they're all going to be on our economy. They will not do a but what they will do is they will make America a more expensive place to create jobs. And today, with millions of people watching this broadcast that are struggling paycheck to paycheck, that do not know how they're going to pay their bills at the end of this month, I am not in favor of anything that is going to make it harder for them to raise their families. Thank you, Senator. I want to go to another question right now. I want to go to another question. This is an issue where in my state, it's thousands of manufacturing jobs. Thousands of manufacturing jobs. For a
Scott
real
Walker.
administration, only the EPA has said will have a marginal impact. We're going to get thousands and thousands of jobs in my state. I think it's something like 30,000 in Ohio, other states across this country. We're going to put manufacturing jobs, the kind of jobs that are far greater than minimum wage. This administration is willing to put. So I'm turning to another issue right now. I'm turning to another issue right now, Senator, because I think we've heard from several this evening. A backlash against vaccines was blamed for the measles outbreak here in California. Dr. Carson, Donald Trump publicly and repeatedly linked vaccines, childhood vaccines, to autism, which, as you know, the medical community adamantly disputes. You're a pediatric neurosurgeon. Should Mr. Trump stop saying this?
Well, let me put it this way. There have been numerous studies, and they have not demonstrated 20 years ago, and it has not
Ben
been
Carson.
revealed to the public what's actually going on. Vaccines are very important, certain ones. Big government, and I think that's one of the things with the government. You know, we have 4.1 million federal employees, 650 federal agencies and departments. That's why they have to get so much of our taxes.
Should he stop saying it? Should he stop saying the vaccines cause autism?
Well, you know, I've just explained it to him. He can read about it if he wants to. I think he's an intelligent man who will make the correct decision not to get into the effect.
Mr. Trump, as president, Mr. Trump, as president, you would be in charge of the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes of Health, both of which say you are wrong. How would you handle this as president?
Autism has become an epidemic. 25 years ago, 35 years ago, you look at the statistics, not even close. It has gotten totally out of control. I am totally in favor of vaccines, but I want smaller doses over a longer period of time. Because you take a baby in, and I've seen it, and I had my children taken care of over a long period of time, over a 2 or 3 year period of time, same exact amount. If you take this little beautiful baby and you pump, I mean, it looks just like it's meant for a horse, not for a child. And we've had so many instances, people that worked for me just the other day, 2 years old, 2.5 years old, a child, a beautiful child, went to have the vaccine and came back, and a week later got a tremendous fever, got very, very sick, now is autistic. I always say it's not, I'm in favor of vaccines, doing over a longer period of time, same amount, but just in little sections. I think you're going to see a big impact on us.
Dr. Carson, you just heard his medical tape. He's an okay doctor.
He's an okay doctor.
But you know, the fact of the matter is, we have extremely well documented proof that there's no autism associated with vaccinations. But it is true that we are probably giving way too many in too short a period of time. And a lot of pediatricians now recognize that and are cutting down on the number and the proximity in which those are done.
And that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. A second opinion? One of the greatest medical discoveries of all time was the vaccine, particularly for smallpox. And you're going to read a story, it's called The Speckled Monster. It's an amazing story. It was all done voluntarily. The people came in by the droves. George Washington wouldn't let his wife visit until she got vaccinated. So I'm all for vaccines, but I'm also for freedom. I'm also really concerned about how they're bunched up. My kids had all of their vaccines, and even if the science doesn't say bunching up's a problem, I ought to have the right to spread my vaccines out a little bit at the very least.
All right, thank you so much. Coming up, I'm sorry, Governor,
I think we need to remember that there are maybe some controversies about autism, but there's no controversy about the things that are really driving medical
This
costs in
guy.
this country. And I would really believe that the next president ought to declare a war on cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and Alzheimer's, because those are the four things that are
Mike
causing
Huckabee.
the greatest level of cost. John Kennedy said we'll go to the moon in a decade and bring a man back, and we did. I grew up in the 50s. I remember the polio vaccine. We saved billions of dollars since that time because we haven't had to treat for polio. Why doesn't this country focus on cures rather than treatment? Why don't we put a definitive focus scientifically on finding the cure for cancer, for heart disease, for diabetes, and for Alzheimer's, a disease alone that will cost us $1.1 trillion by the year 2050? We change the economy and the country.
we have to take another quick break. Coming up, Ronald Reagan looming large over this debate. So how Reagan-esque exactly are these Republicans? We will find out next.
The Reagan Library. I still think it's amazing they put that airplane in there.
It's a presidential campaign in South America. Our candidate is considered arrogant and out of touch. I've already learned 28 points. Jim Rogan, concert. I thought you were up or something. What happened to your hair? We still got a great sense of humor.
If you want to win, we're going to have to take risks. Every event that Rivera attends, you take it. If security beats you up, get that meeting on tape.
It's actually kind of mad at us, Jen. We're talking about people's lives.
I'm not going to stand by as this nation falls apart. This is no longer an election. This is a crisis.
You're going to shoot the commercial, por favor.
Killed himself rather than being one of our commercials.
Guess who's everybody in politics is running for president? That about this guy. Michael Bloomberg. Go get him. Anti-gun hypocrite. If I thought I could win,
Michael Bloomberg.
So, if Bloomberg doesn't run for president, he'll try to pick the president. Bloomberg must step down your soft drinks and snack foods, drive up your electricity bills, and take away your gun rights. Defend your freedom. Defeat Bloomberg. For more information, go to Bloomberg.com.
Bloomberg.com. He is crushing it. That's right, the washer. Donald Trump.
Surprise. Tell the world, tell my family that I'll never stop fighting to make it home. Promotion. Rated PG-13. CNN September 27th. Anthony Bourdain's new season heads off the beaten track. This is insanely good. It's working. Anthony Bourdain Parts Unknown. The new season starts Sunday, September 27th at 9 on CNN.
We got 7 minutes left.
Welcome back to CNN's Republican Presidential Debate at the Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California. We have a few last questions for you, 2 of them a little lighthearted, the other one more serious. We'll start with one of the more light questions. Senator Paul, I'm going to start with you, and we're just going to go down the line. Earlier this year, the Treasury Department announced that a woman will appear on the $10 bill. What woman would you like to see on the $10 bill?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm big on
Rosa Parks.
And I love what Carly said about women's suffrage. I think Susan B. Anthony might be a great choice.
That's an easy one. I put my wife on there. I've been married to her 41 years. She's fought cancer and lived through it. She's raised 3 kids, 5 great grandkids, and she's put up with me. I mean, who else could possibly be on that money other than my wife? And then that way she could spend her own money in her face.
Senator Paul? Senator Rubio? I'm sorry, Senator Rubio. Sorry.
I know we all look alike.
I know we all look
Just the
alike.
senators.
The Rosa Parks. An everyday American that changed the course of history.
Senator Cruz.
Well, I wouldn't change the $10 bill. I'd change the 20. I'd take Jackson off, and I'd leave Alexander Hamilton right where he is as one of our founding fathers. And I very much agree with Marco that it should be Rosa Parks. She was a principled pioneer that helped change this country, helped remedy racial injustice, and that would be an honor that would be entirely appropriate.
Dr. Carson.
I put my mother on there. She was one of 24 children, got married at age 13, had only a very good education.
24 children.
Raised 2 sons by herself, refused to be a victim, wouldn't let us be victims, and has been an inspiration for many people.
Mr. Trump.
Well, because she's been sitting for 3 hours, I think my daughter is on that. Other than that, we'll go with Rosa Parks. I like it.
Governor Bush.
I would go with Ronald Reagan's partner, Margaret Thatcher. Probably illegal, but what the heck? It's just not going to happen. A strong leader is what we need in the White House, and she certainly was a strong leader to restore the United Kingdom to greatness.
Margaret
Just
Thatcher.
like I said at first, thanks a lot for making the rest of us look like chumps up here. But I go for that one. I think for the American Red Cross, she was a great founder of the Red Cross.
Mr. Arena.
I wouldn't change the $10 bill or the $20 bill. I think honestly it's a gesture. I don't think it helps to change our history. What I would think is that we ought to recognize that women are not a special interest group. Women are the majority of this nation. We are half the potential of this nation, and this nation will be better off when every woman has the opportunity to live the life she chooses.
Governor Kasich.
That's probably not maybe legal, but I would pick Mother Teresa, the lady that I had a chance to meet, a woman who lived a life so much bigger than her own, an inspiration to everyone when we think about our responsibility to love our neighbor as we love ourselves.
Governor Christie.
I think the Adams family has been shorted in the currency business. Our country wouldn't be here without John Adams, and he would not have been able to do it without
The Adams Family. I thought he was talking about the TV
Some
show.
good entries if anybody at the Mint was listening. Here's the next lighthearted question. You all know that the United States Secret Service uses code names for the president and his family. Ronald Reagan's code name, for example, was Rawhide, in homage to his performances in Westerns. Nancy Reagan's was Rainbow. You don't have to come up with the one for your spouse, but what would you want, Governor Christie, I'll start with you, your Secret Service code name to be?
What?
would you say true heart?
I have one now who was like until they called me Unit 1. My wife says, you'll never be Unit 1. I'm Unit 1. You're Unit 2.
Secretariat.
Governor Walker?
Oh, I'm a gun artist.
Everybody, it's very high energy, Donald.
That's clever.
Mr. Trump?
Humble.
Humble.
That's a good one.
Dr. Carson?
One nation.
Senator?
You know, as a Cuban, I might go with Fajita. And I'll tell you, I'd go with for Heidi Ainge with the Fajita.
Senator?
Well, there's some people in Florida upset at me over a joke I made about Florida State, but what the heck, I want my clothing that he gave me.
Governor?
I'd go with Duck Country.
Senator?
Justice never sleeps.
That's a mouthful, but okay.
Just never
Okay, here's a more
sleeps.
serious question. Ronald Reagan, the 40th president, used the plane behind you to accomplish a great many things. Perhaps most notably, to challenge Mikhail Gorbachev to tear down the wall, and then ultimately to make peace with the USSR. How will the world look different once your Air Force One is parked in the hangar of your presidential library? Senator Buck.
When I met Ronald Reagan as a teenager, and my family were big supporters of him when he ran against Gerald Ford, it was a big deal because he was the grassroots running against the establishment. And I'll never forget that. And how we stood up and said, you know what, this is something new that our country needs and that our party needs. If I were president, I'd try to be one that says, you know what, I'm a Reagan. Which means that we have to vote on it. The war is initiated by Congress, not by the president. And if we go to war reluctantly, but then when we go to war, we don't fight with one arm tied behind our back. We fight all out to win.
If you're elected president, how would the world look different after you leave office?
At the end of my presidency, I would like to believe that the world would be a safe place. And there would be threats, not only to the U.S., but to Israel and our allies. Well-trained, well-equipped, well-prepared military in the history of mankind. And they would know that a commander-in-chief would never send them to a mission without all the resources necessary. But people wouldn't bully us anymore, because they would know that that would be an invitation to their destruction. Domestically, we'd be operating under a tax system that eliminated the IRS. People wouldn't be punished for their work and for what they produced. And life would be really deemed precious. Abortion would be no more. It would be as much of a scourge in our past as slavery is. And we'd have a peaceful country where people respected each other and people respected law enforcement. And we would focus on cures. And we would make this country not only safe from our enemies without, but safe from the enemies within. It would be a good place to raise our kids and our grandkids.
One of the things that made Ronald Reagan a great president is that he understood that America was a unique nation, like any other that had existed throughout human history. He knew it was founded on universal principles that were powerful: the dignity of all people, human rights, the rights of all to live in freedom and liberty and to choose their own path in life. He just didn't believe it; he acted on it. That's why bringing down communism is so important. Will fly first and foremost to our allies in Israel, in South Korea, and Japan. They know we stand with them, that America can be counted on. It would also fly to China, not just to meet with our enemies, not just to meet with those adversaries of ours over there, but also to meet with those that aspire to freedom and liberty within China. I would even invite them to my inauguration. We would also fly into Moscow and into Russia, and not just meet with the leaders of Russia, but also meet with those who aspire to freedom and liberty in Russia. And ultimately, I hope that my Air Force One, if I become president, will one day land in a free Cuba, where its people can choose their leaders in its own destiny.
Free Cuba.
Ronald Reagan believed in America. If I'm elected president, our friends and allies across the globe will know that we stand with them. The bust of Winston Churchill nation will rule.
It's very well spoken.
Well, you know, I was a radical Democrat before I started listening to Ronald Reagan. And he didn't sound like what they said Republicans were. He sounded logical. And I hope that I sound logical also. Because when I look at what's going on with the United States of America, I see a lot of things that are not logical. I see us allowing people to divide us when in fact our strength is in our unity. I see people exercising the most irresponsible fiscal habits that anyone could possibly do and hiding it from the American people so that the majority of people have no idea what our financial situation is. So when someone comes along and says free college, free phones, free this and that and the other, they say, wow, that's nice, having no idea that they're destabilizing our position. And I think also that Ronald Reagan was a master at understanding that a pinnacle nation has to be a nation that leads. If we learn to lead in the Middle East right now, a coalition will form behind us, but they will never do it if we just sit there and talk about it. Real leadership is what I would hopefully bring to America. We will do something really special. We will make this country greater than ever before. We'll have more jobs. We'll have more of everything. We were discussing disease. We were discussing all sorts of things tonight, many of which will just be words. It'll just pass on. I don't want to say politicians, all talk, no action. But a lot of what we talked about is words, and it'll be forgotten very quickly. Divine President, many of the things that we discussed tonight will not be forgotten. We'll find solutions, and the world will respect us. It will respect us like never before, and it will be actually a friendly world. And I
6 million more people are living in poverty today that Barack Obama got elected president. 6 million more people. The middle class has had declining income. Workforce participation rates are lower than they were in 1977. For the first time in modern history, more businesses are failing than are being created. That is what the next president will have to deal with. And I believe we can reverse course by creating a strategy of high sustained economic growth. Not the new normal of 2% that all the left says we just have to get used to, but a 4% growth strategy where we reform how we tax, fix the broken regulatory system, embrace the energy revolution in our midst, fix the immigration system so we can turn it into an economic driver, deal with the structural fiscal problems that exist because of our entitlement problems that are over. If we grow at 4%, people are going to be lifted out of poverty. The great middle that defines our country will have a chance to be able to pursue their dreams as they see fit. That should be the great challenge and the great opportunity for the next president of the United States, to forge consensus, to go back to a high-growth strategy, and then we'll be able to lead the world. Without a high-growth strategy, our country will never have the resources or the optimism to be able to lead the world, which the world desperately needs our leadership.
13 years old, 2 days before Ronald Reagan was elected. A lot of people forget this, but just a few days before the election in 1980, he was behind in the poll. And I think what changed things was people in America realized they didn't want to hear what was bad about America. They wanted to know how it was going to be better. Ronald Reagan wasn't just a conservative Republican, he was an eternal optimist in the American people. And I am too. So here's what I think will make America better. We need to live in a world where our children are free from the threats of radical Islamic terrorism. We need to live in America where we have an economy. Everyone can live their piece of the American dream, no matter what that dream is. And we need to live in America. We need a federal government. It's not too big to fail, but ultimately small enough to succeed. And we send powers back to the states and back to the people. That's what I did in Wisconsin. We took on the big government union bosses, the big government special interests. Many of them came in from Washington. We spent millions of dollars to try and take me out because we stood up to them. We didn't back down in either of those instances. If you get a chance as your next president, I won't back down any day, any way, anyhow. I'll fight and win for you and your family every single day.
I think what this nation can be and must must be is symbolized by Lady Liberty and Lady Justice. Lady Liberty stands tall and strong. She is clear as a blue. She doesn't shield her eyes from the enemies of the world, but she faces outward into the world nevertheless, as we always must, and she holds her torch high, because she knows she is a beacon of hope in a very troubled world. And Lady Justice holds a sword by her side, because she is a fighter, a warrior, for the values and the principles that have made this nation great. She holds a scale in her other hand, and with that scale she says all of us are equal in the eyes of God, and so all of us must be equal in the eyes of the law and the government, powerful and powerless alike. And she wears a blindfold. And with that blindfold, she is saying to us that it must be true, it can be true, that in this country, in this century, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter how you start, it doesn't matter your circumstances. Here in this nation, every American's life must be filled with the possibilities that come from their God-given gifts. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So as president, I will make this a nation that will solve problems. And how? By having the elected officials and leaders realize they're Americans before they're Republicans or Democrats. I did, and I've done it in Ohio by having the elected officials realize that Ohio is before anything else. Secondly, I will rebuild the relationships and show the respect to our allies around the world. We have no choice but to do that. We will be stronger when we are unified. We will fight for freedom and for human rights. And finally, a little bit of what Carly said. The people that are out there listening, America was never great because we ran America for the America is great because we run America for laws that with citizenship, where everybody's actions make a huge difference in changing the world. We have a Holocaust memorial on the State House grounds, and there is one line on there that stands out all the time. If you've saved one life, you've changed the world. And you can adopt that as citizens and rebuild and re-inspire our country. Thank you.
I turned 18 in 1980. When I first voted for Ronald Reagan, boy, am I glad I did it. I think the country is too. Frisky presidency won't be about me. It'll be about you. Tonight you sit home, you're living in a country that you play by the rules, you pay the taxes, you do the hard things to raise your family. Yet you feel like America's generosity is being taken advantage of, that your system is being gamed, and that you're turning out to fall further and further behind. Our presidency will be about ending that, about enforcing the law, level the playing field for everybody, and once again reward those folks who play by the rules and think that justice means more than just a word, but means a way of life. And I will tell you this, around the world, I will not shake hands with, I will not meet with, and I will not agree to anything with a country that says death to us and death to Israel, holds our hostages while we sign agreements with them. There will be an America that is strong and resolute and will once again be able to stick out its chest and say, we truly are the greatest nation in the world because we live our lives like each and every day.
Back in Philly, listening to this Republican presidential debate on behalf of everyone here at CNN. We want to thank candidates, the Reagan Library, and the Republican National Committee. Thank you also to Hugh Hewitt and Dan Bash. The next presidential debate will also be right here on CNN.com. Yeah. Face off for the first time on October 15th. That debate, in partnership with Facebook, will be moderated by my colleague Anderson Cooper. And Anderson picks up our coverage of tonight's debate right now. Before I throw to Anderson, let's have one final round of applause for the candidates.
So that's that. That was a good one. That was definitely a good one.
Listening very closely there in the Reagan Library. It is not over yet. The candidates still on stage.
President Reagan's Air Force One.
Families start to meet up with them. We're going to talk to as many debaters you see now. We'll also be bringing you high points, fireworks, fact checking, talking points, getting some fascinating real-time audience reaction, breaking it down for the next 2 hours. If you missed some parts of this debate, we're going to be showing you the key moments throughout this debate. We'll see Donald Trump bringing some of his supporters on here. Indispensable Amanda Carpenter, former communications director for Senator Ted Cruz. I'm here also with Jeffrey Gold, who served as White House political director in the Reagan administration. He now supports Donald Trump. And in Navarro, he supports Jeb Bush. He supports President Marco Rubio. Chief Cleveland, Twitter coach John King, host of CNN's Inside Politics, and David Axelrod, CNN senior political commentator, current top advisor to President Obama. David Axelrod, this is your thoughts.
Well, one thought is these people have an iron constitution.
It was hot up there. It was a lot of sweating. Yeah, it really was.
Well, anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us. And please note that this video is in compliance with YouTube's terms of service and is not to be considered misleading, spam, or commercially deceptive. Don't forget to subscribe, comment, rate, and tell me who your favorite presidential candidate is this time running. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope you have a great day, night, or evening. Take care.